I never thought a simple turkey sandwich would be the catalyst that changed the rest of my life. My name is Joan Kirkland. I am 68 years old, a widow for 6 years. And until recently, I lived in a spacious four-bedroom house in a quiet suburb of Ohio. The house was completely paid off. It was my sanctuary built on decades of hard work alongside my late husband. 2 years ago, my son Mark and his wife Chloe asked to move in. Mark explained they needed to save for a down payment on their own house. I agreed. I am a mother. Helping my child felt like the natural thing to do. I did not ask for rent. I continued paying the property taxes, the electric bill, the water, the gas, and the internet. Chloe worked in marketing. She was practical, sharp, and liked things done a very specific way. Over time, she started treating the house less like a shared family space and more like her personal domain. She rearranged my living room. She complained about my choice of cleaning supplies. But the breaking point arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in the kitchen making a sandwich using some deli turkey she had bought from an upscale grocery store. I had the bread on a plate when Chloe walked in, dropping her designer bag on the counter. She stared at me, her expression tightening into a look of absolute disgust. She reached over, pulled the package of turkey away from my hand, and tossed it into the fridge. "Buy your own food," she sneered, her voice completely flat. "Stop living off me." I am tired of feeding an anchor. I stood there in my own kitchen, standing on the hardwood floors I paid, for listening to a woman who had not paid a utility bill in 2 years call me an anchor. I did not cry. I did not argue. I just wiped my hands on a towel and walked away. If you are dealing with someone who disrespects you, arguing is a waste of breath. Angry people scream. Smart people calculate. That evening, I sat at the small desk in my bedroom and opened my laptop. I pulled up 2 years of bank statements and started a silent audit of my own life. The numbers told a story I had been ignoring. I was spending nearly $800 a month on utilities and household supplies that directly benefited Mark and Chloe. Meanwhile, the Amazon packages stacked up by the front door daily. Chloe bought imported skincare organic dog food for a poodle they didn't even own yet, and custom clothes. Mark was no better, upgrading his golf clubs every season. They were not saving for a house. They were using my home as a free hotel to fund a luxury lifestyle. Later that night, I walked down the hall to get a glass of water. Mark was in the kitchen. I casually mentioned that Chloe seemed frustrated earlier. Mark sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Mom, she's just stressed at work. Plus, you know she likes her specific brands. Just let her have her space. We're doing a lot of the heavy lifting around here lately." Heavy lifting. I looked at my son, a boy I had raised to be observant, now completely blinded by his own convenience. He actually believed they were running this household. I smiled gently. "I understand, Mark. I'll make sure to stay out of her way." I went back to my room and closed the door. I did not feel heartbroken. I felt clarity. The fog had completely lifted. I had been functioning as their invisible safety net, and they had mistaken my silence for weakness. It was time to pull the net away and let them feel gravity. The next morning, I drove to the local appliance store and purchased a small, quiet mini fridge. I had it placed in the corner of my bedroom. I went to the grocery store, stocked up on my favorite snacks, fresh fruit sandwich materials, and a small coffee maker. For the past 2 years, I had been the one quietly filling the gaps in the main kitchen pantry. When they ran out of buttermilk, toilet paper, or coffee, I just replaced it without a word. Chloe thought the house magically restocked itself. By Friday, the magic ran out. I was reading a book in the living room when Chloe opened the main refrigerator, letting out a loud groan. She slammed it shut and turned to Mark, who was watching television. "Mark, where is the milk? And we're completely out of eggs." "I thought you went to the store." "I didn't go," Mark replied, distracted by the game. Mom usually gets that stuff. Chloe turned her gaze to me, crossing her arms. Joan, did you forget to do the house shopping this week? I placed my bookmark on the page and looked up, meeting her eyes with absolute calm. Oh, I bought my own groceries, Chloe. Just like you asked. I wouldn't want to live off you. She blinked, clearly caught off guard by her own words being handed back to her. She opened her mouth to speak, but found nothing to say. She grabbed her car keys and stomped out the front door. I picked up my book and continued reading. Food was just the first string I was going to cut. The real shock was going to arrive in the mail. If you are enjoying the story so far, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss how this plays out. Monday morning, after Mark and Chloe left for work, I made a few phone calls. First, I called the internet provider. I canceled the high-speed fiber optic package that Mark used for his weekend gaming. Next, I canceled the premium cable and all the streaming services attached to my credit card. When Mark came home that evening, it took exactly 12 minutes for the complaints to start. He walked into my room holding his tablet, looking confused. Mom, the Wi-Fi is down. Did you restart the router? I reached into my closet, pulled out the internet router, and handed it to him. I canceled the account, Mark. I realized I only really use the internet on my phone, so paying for the premium package didn't make sense for my budget. You are welcome to set up an account in your own name. Mark stared at the plastic box in his hands like it was a foreign object. Set up my own mom. They charge like $120 a month for this speed. I know, I replied softly. I've been paying it for 24 months. I closed my door. The next day, I called the utility companies. I instructed them to prepare a final reading for the end of the month. I was removing my name from the water, gas, and electric bills. I wasn't kicking them out, nor was I trapping them in some complex legal snare. I was simply returning their responsibilities to them. While they were at work, I began pulling my heirloom china, my silver, and my valuable winter coats from the shared closets. I packed them quietly into sturdy boxes and slid them under my bed. I was preparing my exit piece by careful piece. 3 days later, Chloe walked into the kitchen with a stack of expensive cardstock invitations. She dropped them on the island counter, looking extremely pleased with herself. I'm hosting my 30th birthday party here next month, she announced to Mark, though she made sure I could hear. I've invited 25 people. My parents, my sister, the whole marketing team. We are going to do a catered brunch on the patio. She then looked at me. Joan, I'll need the kitchen completely deep cleaned by Friday night. And please make sure your clutter is cleared out of the living room. I want the house looking perfect for the guests. She didn't ask. She ordered. She was throwing a massive party to show off a beautiful suburban house that she did not own, and she wanted the actual owner to play the maid. I gave her a warm, polite smile. Don't worry, Chloe. I will stay completely out of your way. That afternoon, I drove across town to a beautiful, quiet, 55-plus independent living community. I had been eyeing it for months. The grounds were perfectly manicured. The security was excellent, and the 2-bedroom apartments were flooded with natural light. I walked into the leasing office, wrote a check for the deposit, and signed a standard lease. I had exactly 3 weeks until Chloe's birthday. I pulled out my phone and booked a professional moving company. When the dispatcher asked what day I needed the truck, I looked at the calendar. Saturday the 15th, I said. The exact day of Chloe's catered brunch. I had 3 weeks to pack an entire 4-bedroom house right under their noses without them noticing. The secret to moving out of a house without raising suspicion is understanding what people actually notice. Mark and Chloe never noticed the foundation of the house. They only noticed what served them. I started with the garage. I packed up my gardening tools, my late husband's workbench tools, and the holiday decorations. When Mark asked why the garage looked emptier, I simply told him I was doing a deep autumn decluttering. Good idea, Mom, he said, not looking up from his phone. Place was getting a little dusty. I moved to the guest rooms. I boxed up the books, the spare linens, the antique lamps. I stacked the boxes neatly in the corner of my bedroom. Chloe saw me carrying a box of old picture frames one afternoon and actually praised me. Finally getting rid of that old junk, she asked, sipping a sparkling water. I've been meaning to tell you this house really needs a modern minimalist vibe. You are absolutely right, I replied. Minimalist is exactly what I am going for. I transferred my bank accounts to a new branch near my apartment. I forwarded my mail to a private P.O. box. I made sure every single piece of paper tying my financial life to this property was secured. I didn't need a lawyer or a messy eviction process. The house was mine. The furniture was mine. I was simply taking my belongings and leaving them the empty shell they loved to pretend was theirs. By the Thursday before the party, my bedroom was stacked floor to ceiling with boxes hidden behind a locked door. To the untrained eye, the rest of the house looked normal. But the foundation was already packed in cardboard. Saturday morning arrived with bright sunshine and a crisp autumn breeze. Perfect weather for a patio brunch. Chloe was up at 6, barking orders at Mark to sweep the deck and arrange the outdoor furniture. I made my coffee in my mini fridge setup and walked out to the kitchen fully dressed. Chloe was frantic arranging expensive floral centerpieces on the dining table. "Joan, the caterers get here at noon," she snapped, not looking at me. "Guests arrive at 1. Can you make sure the bathrooms are stocked with the good towels?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. "I won't be able to do that, Chloe." "I have some plans today," she scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Unbelievable." "Fine. Just stay in your room until people leave." "I don't want you hovering around my guests." "Understood," I said. At 12:30, Chloe went upstairs to take a shower and do her makeup. Mark was in the backyard trying to fix a broken umbrella stand. The caterers had just started unloading chafing dishes in the driveway. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text message to the foreman of the moving crew. "We are ready." 5 minutes later, a massive 30-foot white moving truck backed slowly into my driveway, the backup alarm beeping loudly. It parked right next to the caterer's van. 3 burly men in matching uniforms stepped out, lowered the ramp, and walked up to my front door. I swung the door open, smiled, and handed the foreman a clipboard. "Everything with a blue sticker goes in the truck," I said. "Let's start with the living room." The movers worked with incredible efficiency. Within 15 minutes, my large sectional sofa, the solid oak coffee table, and the expensive area rug were carried out the front door. They moved to the dining room, taking the heavy mahogany table and the 6 matching chairs right out from under Chloe's floral arrangements, which I gently relocated to the kitchen counter. The caterers stood against the wall, utterly confused, holding trays of tiny quiches. At 1:15, I heard heavy footsteps pounding down the stairs. Chloe appeared in the hallway, wearing a stunning silk dress, her hair perfectly curled. She stopped dead in her tracks. She looked at the empty living room. She looked at the dining room where only dust bunnies remained. What is happening?" She stammered, her voice high and tight. "Who are these people? Where is the furniture?" Before I could answer, the front door opened. Chloe's parents, along with her sister and brother-in-law, walked in, holding wrapped gifts. Her mother stepped inside with a massive smile that immediately collapsed. "Chloe, honey," her mother asked, looking around the cavernous, echoing house. "Are you remodeling?" Mark ran in from the backyard, freezing when he saw the movers carrying his favorite leather recliner out the door. "Mom!" "Stop them. What are you doing?" "People are arriving." I stood by the kitchen island adjusting my watch. More guests were walking through the open front door, gathering in the entryway, looking bewildered at the chaotic scene. "I am taking my belongings, Mark," I said calmly. "Just doing a little decluttering like Chloe suggested." By 1:30, relatives and co-workers were clustered awkwardly in the kitchen and the empty hallway. The house echoed with every whisper. The movers had finished loading the last of my bedroom boxes. Chloe's face had drained of all color. She marched up to me, her hands shaking her carefully constructed image shattering in front of her co-workers. "What did you do?" She hissed, tears of pure humiliation welling in her eyes. "You ruined my birthday. You ruined my house." I looked at her, then looked at the crowd of people watching us. I kept my voice perfectly level. "I didn't ruin anything, Chloe. I simply took your advice. A few weeks ago, right here in this kitchen, you told me to buy my own food and stop living off you. You called me an anchor." I paused, letting the word ring out in the empty room. Chloe's mother gasped. Mark looked at his wife, shocked. "So I stopped living off you," I continued. "I bought my own food. I packed my own furniture. I am moving to my own apartment. I refuse to be a burden to you anymore." I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila folder. I handed it to Mark. "The utilities are officially disconnected from my accounts as of Monday," I explained clearly. "Inside that folder is a standard residential lease. Since this is my house, I will be keeping it as a rental property. Market rate is $2,500 a month. If you wish to stay, sign it and send the rent to the property manager listed on page 2. Otherwise, you have 30 days to vacate." The silence in that kitchen was absolute. I didn't wait for Mark to speak. I didn't wait for Chloe's mother to step in and try to save face. I simply zipped my purse, gave a polite nod to the stunned guests, and walked out my front door. The caterers parted like the Red Sea to let me pass. As I stepped onto the driveway, the moving foreman handed me the final clipboard to sign. The heavy metal doors of the moving truck slammed shut, the sound echoing satisfyingly through the perfectly manicured neighborhood. I got into my car and drove across town. The autumn leaves were bright orange and red against the sky. I rolled the windows down, turned up the radio, and let the crisp air rush in. For the first time in 2 years, I felt 50 pounds lighter. When I arrived at my new apartment, the movers brought everything inside, arranging my familiar furniture in the bright, sunny rooms. I spent the afternoon unpacking my heirloom china, the pieces I had quietly hidden under my bed, and placed them in my new glass cabinets. I made a cup of tea in a kitchen that was entirely mine, sat on my private balcony, and watched the sun set. There was no tiptoeing, no complaints about my brands of food, just absolute undisturbed peace. Mark called me 6 times that weekend. I let every single call go straight to voicemail. On Tuesday morning, I finally received an email from him. It was a long, rambling message about how humiliated Chloe was in front of her co-workers and how they felt completely blindsided. But at the very bottom of that long complaint was a scanned copy of the signed lease. They had quickly checked the local housing market and realized they couldn't afford a luxury rental without my invisible financial support, so they were forced to agree to my terms. I didn't reply to his emotional guilt trip. I simply forwarded the document to my property manager. Suddenly, those impromptu weekend getaways, designer bags, and expensive imported groceries weren't so easy to afford when they actually had to pay for the roof over their heads, their own internet, and the water they used. I later heard from a relative that Chloe actually had to start clipping coupons and doing her own heavy lifting at the discount grocery store. I never hated my son, and I didn't even hate Chloe. But I realized that you cannot teach respect to people who only see you as a free resource. You can only remove the resource and let reality be the teacher. I now spend my weekends taking watercolor classes, reading for hours without being interrupted, and playing cards with my new neighbors. I sleep soundly every single night, knowing my boundaries are finally set in stone. If you loved this story, leave a comment below and share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own worth. Thank you for reading, and I will see you in the next one.